All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
What if the emotions you're avoiding, anger, shame, anxiety, aren't the problem, but they're actually the key to your healing? That's a quote from today's guest, Emma McAdam. You're listening to the Next Level Guy Show podcast. This is your shortcut to becoming the man that you were meant to be. Emma McAdam is a licensed therapist and creator of Therapy in a Nutshell. She doesn't just challenge how we think about mental health, she rewires it. In this episode, she unpacks how emotional mastery isn't just about control or suppression of emotions, but it's about understanding, acceptance, and building the right emotional toolkit for your life. If you've ever felt like your mind is your biggest enemy, I know I have. Growing up, it was a nightmare, and I'm sure we can all relate. This conversation flips the script and hands you the tools to change your story. Emma is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's a creator of Therapy in a Nutshell, this hugely popular YouTube channel which helps millions make sense of mental health. She has over 15 years of hands-on experience, from wilderness therapy in the Utah desert to working with juvenile corrections. She's seen it all. She has first-hand experience of what it takes to move from coping to truly thriving in life. Her mission is to make mental health practical, learnable, and life-changing. Through her videos, courses, and resources, Emma breaks down complex psychology into simple, actionable tools anyone can use to manage anxiety, process emotions, and rewire unhelpful practices and patterns in their life. Because as Emma says, emotional health isn't something you have or don't have, it's a skill you can master. And now, let's get to the interview. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I've written you a wee introduction, and today's guest is on a mission to make mental health tools radically accessible. With over 2 million YouTube subscribers and a background spanning wilderness therapy to juvenile corrections, Emma McAdam, creator of Therapy in a Nutshell, has become a trusted voice in teaching people how to move from just surviving to genuine healing. Would you agree with that? How would you define the great that's in front of me?
Say that again.
How would you define yourself? Like when you introduce yourself to someone, how do you explain the great that is Emma?
Oh man, yeah, I don't know if I'm great in any way. I'm a therapist who hangs out in my office and writes videos that somehow like millions of people watch, and I'm constantly surprised that this happens. But I know there's like a dramatic need for mental health education, and I've seen how impactful it can be. So I love like making it easier to understand. That's how I would describe it, as like somehow this happened to me and I'm on YouTube now.
I mean, it's very well deserved praise, because you have this way of like giving raw, honest advice that cuts through the cookie cutter of what we want to hear, and you give it as we need to hear it. Like we're talking about before we started, I was literally venting about a colleague that I'd fallen out with at work, and I was listening to one of your episodes where you talked about how that's a sign that you're people pleasing, that you're tying your value into other people's opinions of you. And at that moment, I went, okay. And I could then use your teaching from that episode in real time to fix that problem. It's phenomenal, the work that you do. But what was your first introduction to therapy, emotional control, these sorts of things?
Yeah. So I was a pretty like unhappy teenager, And in college, I took a job at a camp. It was like a church camp, and I loved it. And I loved working with teenagers, but I wasn't so like peppy and happy all the time. I'm not one of those like rah kids. So the next summer, I took a job working for a wilderness therapy program. So these parents who have these kids who are struggling, and the parents are struggling, they'll send their kids out to the deserts of Utah
As you
for
do.
6 to 12 weeks, as you do. And I would hang out with them for 8 days at a time. And like I saw these kids go through these huge transformations with the combination of therapy and then the work we did as staff and in the group and in that environment. And it was just so fun to see them make progress, but it also was an opportunity for me to really gain a lot of insight into myself and do a lot of my own work. So that's how I started wilderness therapy in 2005.
All of that, because you see these programs and you think, is that really, but then you think of what you learn about yourself when you go on a camping trip with your uncle and all that sort of stuff. But what did you find when you would see that kind of therapy based on the healing modalities that you see a doctor prescribing? Here's some tablets, disappear for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
How did you find that balance between the two, the attitudes towards it?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think from my perspective, I think medication can be a great tool, and unfortunately, it's just one tool. So if we want to make a really great life and we want to be able to like solve more problems, we need more tools to handle them than medication. So medication, I think it's a really valuable tool. But we got to learn the life skills. We got to learn what to do with our emotions when they come up, and we got to learn how to work with our feelings and our physical reactions, our physiological responses to situations, as well as our relationships. So, I think some people are really anti-medication. Some people are like, "Oh, medication's the only thing I've tried," and it's like that's fine. What are you gonna like? What else can you add to your tool belt? That's what I'm always asking.
I mean, because you've said that emotions they're not enemies, they're messengers. They're there to tell us things. I mean, I once asked ChatGPT what was the meaning of jealousy, and it explained about how there was a positive meaning behind it. But we would, in today's society, if I said you were emotional, we see that as a slight. How do we how should we see emotions, feelings, mental health to not give it this bad stigma that you see couples arguing, shouting you're emotional at each other?
So here's how I think about emotions. I think about emotions as being informative. I think of emotions as being similar to a smoke alarm. So a smoke alarm is loud. It's uncomfortable. It causes like a physiological, like I want to get this turned off, or I want to leave this situation where the smoke alarm's going off. And it's also inaccurate frequently. So I've had my smoke alarm go off a lot more times telling me there might be a fire than there was actually fire. Like I actually have never had a fire in my house, but I've had a lot of smoke alarms go off, whether I'm cooking bacon or taking a hot shower, right? And so I think our emotions are like, one, they're super vital. They're really important and they're loud and they're informative. And that's why we don't get rid of smoke alarms, right? We want them in our lives. We want to have smoke alarms in our lives. We just want to make our smoke alarms a little bit more accurate. We don't want a smoke alarm that's going off all the time when there's no fire. And we don't want a smoke alarm that never goes off when there's a fire. So I think learning to understand like how our smoke alarm works, how our emotions work, gives us an opportunity to learn how to like listen to our emotions and be informed by them without reacting to them, suppressing them, obeying them, or being controlled by them, or just like trying to avoid them at all costs, because we need emotions to live a vital life. And I think sometimes people get stuck in a habit of trying to not have emotions. Like they see not having emotions as the goal. Like, oh, my life goal is to not have anxiety, or my life goal is to not feel sad. And I think there's very clear evidence that makes people pretty miserable, like in general.
Definitely. I mean, you see that with a lot of men, don't you? It's we're told to be brave silence, don't ask for help, and you see them fighting with themselves, like they'd rather go punch a wall than explain how they're feeling. And I think that's, are we slowly getting rid of that stigma? Are we
I hope so.
getting to a point where men can approach that? Because I remember one of the biggest insights I had on here was, I think it was number 2, where the guest said to me, you can change your story at any point. You just tell yourself something different. And I was like, whoa. Because at that point, I had believed I was everything I thought. I was everything I believed about myself. And as I started leaning more into self-improvement, I learned more about you can change, and then neuroplasticity and all these sorts of things. Is it dangerous that we teach men that it's a bad thing to be emotional?
I think it's so I think we have to look at this as a tool, right? So we look at like these skills people have as a tool. And if you look at certain situations, being able to suppress your emotions and push them away, that's an excellent tool. So let's say if you're an EMT and you drive up to a crash scene and you need to pick bodies up and put them into the ambulance and get them to the hospital, it's not a great time to be like, I wonder how this is deeply related to my feelings of inadequacy, right? Like you're not going to sit there and cry. You're going to suppress those emotions, get those people taken care of. And that's that skill of like, hey, hold that down for a minute is actually a helpful tool. And I think men have been told that for a long time. Unfortunately, the problem is that skill has been overgeneralized to like, that's the only skill men are taught. Don't cry. Don't be a girl. Don't show your feelings. Don't be weak. Don't be vulnerable. And so it's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to use that skill in every situation. Like, something, my father dies. Okay, don't cry, don't be weak, don't have feelings, right? And it's not an effective skill. It's also not an effective skill in the long run. Like if you're an ambulance driver, an EMT, it's like you need to add other skills to your toolkit so that after the situation has de-escalated, then you've got another skill where you're like, okay, now I've got all this cortisol stored up in my body. Now I'm going to like take care of my body. And I've got all this sadness or fear stored up in my mind. I'm going to process through those feelings. And then I'm going to be okay to show up to work the next day. So there's like the short-term skill is like, oh, let's suppress our feelings. Great. Works great if you're a warrior. Works great if you're a hunter. Works great if you're making crucial decisions in the moment. If you're an EMT or if there's like some crisis to be solved. But then you also need to add in the other skills too. So I'm not going to jump in and just be like, yeah, men shouldn't be told like you should never cry. It's like, oh, like you can use that skill sometimes. Just don't have it be your only skill. So just like if you have a toolbox, you don't want just a hammer in your toolbox. You want a screwdriver and a saw and a wrench and a vice grip and a clamp and all these different tools. So I just see it as like, okay, men don't need to throw out everything they've been told about being strong and resilient. Like I love those skills too. And let's add in like feeling your feelings and the ability to express your feelings or to identify your feelings or to process your feelings or to communicate with another person how their actions are bothering you or take responsibility for how your actions are bothering someone else. Like these are just a bunch of different tools. And I see them as like, oh, just no one taught you. Like literally no one taught you how to do these skills. So you stick with your hammer and you just treat every problem like it's a nail.
Sounds like every guy I know. Yep, myself included. It's like I could get an Allen key, but nah. Let's just stick with a screwdriver. Let's see how that works.
Yeah, let's just hit it harder, right? Let's just try more. Yeah.
If in doubt, brute strength always works.
Right? Yeah, just grit it, and it works. It works in the short term a lot of times, but what we find is it doesn't work in the long run.
Because that's the thing, we as kids, you see people, like the kids will stand up, they'll talk to each other, they'll have these like really dynamic, dramatic kind of conversations. And then as an adult, you're like, whoa, no, I don't want to hear about you crying at work. I don't want to hear you about this and that. Like, I'm going to call you this, I'm going to call you that, and we're going to have a beer and we'll forget about it. Do you see people now moving away from drink, drugs, promiscuous sex, all the bad habits that we were doing, and now people are being a bit more open because we've got a bit more sort of therapy in the mainstream?
Yeah, I do. I definitely see that there's definitely a mainstream movement toward being more aware of mental health, talking more about mental health, decreasing the stigma. I even heard about a study showing that people like it on the dating apps. If someone, like a guy, says, "Oh, I've been to therapy," they see
Yeah.
that now as like a very positive thing. They're like, "Oh, good, man. A guy who's like got some insight or is working on himself or takes accountability or trying to learn." Like, I think people are seeing that as a positive, where maybe 20 years ago. Well, in the US, I think it's maybe perhaps different. You tell me. Is it different in Britain?
It's definitely getting there. We're a bit more
Yeah.
kind of. You see girls now expecting an emotional layer to you. I don't know
Yeah.
how many they find with that, but it's
Yeah.
they usually make a comment on your sexuality if you discuss emotional feelings. Let's put it that way.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Like a positive comment or a negative comment?
Usually negative. It's like, oh, shut
Mm,
up, yeah, and they carry on because nobody wants to. Because if you open it up, you're then expected to you open up, and I think we fear that dark thing inside us, that comment, that bad thing we did, whatever it is. You can see people go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not taking a chance that this might mean I have to take part in it. Um,
mhm.
how do you find that then with people who come to you? Do you see a similarity? Do they have a breaking point? Is the pain become too much before they come to you, or are they starting to come
Yeah.
to you now to help?
So I certainly see more and more people seeking like mental health advice as a way to optimize instead of just as a way to like, oh, my whole life fell apart and I've hit rock bottom and I have nothing else and my wife's leaving me and I just got fired at work and I'm doing all these drugs. Now I'm going to do therapy. Like, I certainly see more people using therapy and mental health supports as a way to optimize, especially I think some of the most proficient CEOs and managers. I think some of the smartest business people are accessing therapy and coaching as a way to see themselves more clearly, to identify like skills that they lack, and then to learn those skills. Like, I think there's people who see mental health as like, oh, you either are fine or you're a wreck. Like, you either have it or you don't. And then there's the rest of people. Like, this is what my goal is to show people that mental health is a skill. Like, emotional regulation is a skill, and it's a skill you can learn, just like you can learn math or just like you can learn how to run a business or manage a budget. It's like these are practical skills. And it's not woo woo, and it's not just sitting in a room crying and talking about your feelings. It's like, no, no, no. Like, let's learn this process. And once you learn this process, that's going to make your life better. So I see some of the most successful people engaging in a lot of coaching and therapy as a way to just optimize, to perform better.
So if we start from the main problem area, which is usually ourselves, you wouldn't allow a friend to speak to you the way that we do normally. Like we'll say, oh, you're an idiot, you're a simpleton, you
Mm-hmm.
do this, you do that. Or we use language like would, could, should. You beat yourself up to the ninth degree. How does
Yep.
our thinking patterns, how does the language, the internal monologue that we have affect us? How does it shape us in what we do and how we behave?
Oh man, absolutely. Yeah, our self-talk and how we talk to ourselves impacts us immensely. And not only does it impact our emotions, so like if I yell at myself, or I think one of the things I see is really common is self-punishment. So yeah, you make a mistake or something goes wrong, and you're such an idiot, you're an effing idiot, whatever. And when we talk to ourselves that way, that makes us feel more scared, more risk averse. We're less willing to try, like to reach out to, like, let's say we got in a fight with our partner. If we chew ourselves out, we're much less likely to solve the problem that led to the situation. We're much less likely to have a good conversation. And like I consider this vulnerability as like, oh, have a little bit of courage and say, huh, I wonder, like, in what way I could make this situation better. I have no idea. So I wonder if I asked my partner, hey, you got really mad at me. I wonder what I could do differently next time. Or how would you prefer I handle this? And then maybe their ideas are terrible, but just the willingness to ask that question. If you just label yourself as an idiot, it's going to prevent you from asking that question,
No.
because you're like, well, what's the point? Why try? Why bother? I might as well just resign myself to wallowing in my feelings, and that leads to this kind of learned hopelessness. But it also changes our physiology. Like our physiology shifts like down a gear into like, oh, might as well give up. And we have less energy, less like, so what you'll see physiologically when you chew yourself out and you label yourself and you berate yourself is a lot of times people shift out of the activation mode into the overwhelm mode. I've got like a little poster back here. It's got a glare on it. I'm going to grab it really quick. I like talking about the nervous system. Just a second. Let me get my headphones back in. So, like when we're in a window of tolerance, when we have a growth mindset, it's so shiny, isn't it? When we have a growth mindset, we have this belief like, I can handle this. And in our window of tolerance, we think things like, I'm safe, I'm capable, I'm confident. If we make a mistake, we might think, oh, I can figure this out. Or I wonder who could help me learn how to solve this problem. This is our window of tolerance. When we're a little stressed out, we go into this activated stressed out mode, the fight, flight, freeze response, where our nervous system activates, and we'll have a stress response where our heart rate goes up, our breathing rate goes up, our cortisol levels go up, and that helps us take action to solve problems. But when we berate ourselves and punish ourselves, we usually slip into this, what's called nervous system hypoarousal. And so our thoughts are like, I'm hopeless, or I feel hopeless, or the situation is hopeless. We think, why bother? We feel sad, we feel depressed, we feel shame, but our body physiologically changes. We get a slower heart rate, we get slower breathing, our digestion slows down. We might feel heavy, numb, unmotivated, tired. We often slump, and then we isolate relationally. So when we berate ourselves, our nervous system physiologically changes. And you can actually see it in your heart rate, like if you track your heart rate.
I think we could all remember a time that we've done that where you could actually feel, like your muscles tense. Yeah, like you're saying, the heart, your breathing. Oh, I could be in the moment of thinking about the last time I did it, and because they say you wouldn't allow a friend to speak to you like that.
Yeah.
So why do you allow yourself to speak to that? And I remember somebody saying to me, "Your cognitive behavioral therapy I had years ago," and they said, "You're not your thoughts. That's just a voice that comes with a bias. It gives you suggestions about things that you've told it you want to think about, good or bad." And I like the idea of, is it parts therapy, where you pretend you're sitting at the head of a table and it's not you scared, it's a part of you that's scared, it's a part of you that's angry, and you're the overall person in control, and you can say, no, I feel that fear, but we're going to do this instead. And you disassociate from that in the good sense. But when we are in the anger, the upset, the exhaustion, whatever it is, and we are in the autopilot response, trigger response, how do we snap out of that? How do we rise above that to catch it and go, actually, Emma said to do this? How do we stop going straight into the behavior that's going to get us in trouble?
Here's two things I would say. The first thing I would say is you've got to write down what your stories are. So if your story is I'm unlovable, or I'm a screw up, or if your story is the world is so unfair, everyone's going to be so unfair to me, right? If that's your default story, when things go bad, like you get criticized at work, which one do you think? Oh, I'm a complete failure. Oh, the world is so unfair, right? Like which story do you buy into? You've got to gain some insight and identify what your stories are around that. Then you take that and you say, my story is, and instead of saying I am a failure, you say, or I am unlovable, you say, my story is I'm unlovable. My story is, this is just a story, right? And you write this down and you tape it to your wall. And then when you catch yourself, because the first step is always insight, right? You've got to notice that you're creating this story. The next step is to say, this story, we only hang on to things that do something for us. Like we only keep repeating things that feel good in some way or reinforce us in some way. So for example, eating 10 Snickers a day or eating however many, whatever, Snickers a day is not good for you. But we eat too much sugar Because it feels good, right? It does something for us, right? So that's why we engage in these negative behaviors. I ate some candy, right? Like, it's not like eating candy is a bad thing. I don't want to like go on this eating disorder thing, but so everything we repeatedly do is reinforcing us in some way. So how does that story, I'm such a loser, nobody loves me, how does that story actually, how do you like that? Why do you like believing that? What good does it do for you?
Is that like through
Any
the
guess?
self-sabotage it gives you a reason why you don't need to put effort in, because it's the outside world. It's not you and what you can do. It's not you controlling the controllables. It's someone
That's right.
else's fault.
Yeah. Yep. So I was talking to my cousin the other day. His wife is separated from him. I was like, Bud, what's going on? Like, what's happening? He's like, well, I'm just a narcissist. And I'm like, you're a narcissist? I mean, I know the internet is really hot on this whole idea of narcissism right now. He's like, yeah, I took the survey and I'm like 8 out of 8 on it. Like, he's like, I'm just such a narcissist. And I'm like, so is that label helpful in any way? Well, probably means nothing will ever work in my marriage. And I was like, so how's that label like how convenient is that for you? Like, how convenient is that for you? And it's like, he was using that label as a reason why he didn't need to do the work, right? He didn't need to sit down and like make an apology. He's not a narcissist, by the way. The internet's labeling everyone as he's not a true narcissist. There are some people who legitimately really, really struggle with some of those traits, but it's like, for him, the label was a very convenient, very convincing, socially constructed idea that people who are narcissists can't change, so therefore he doesn't need to. It excused him from putting in effort. And yeah.
Well, I suppose it's like when you Google your symptoms. It tells you your headache is a brain tumor. You start believing it, and it gives you a story, a justification of why it's the world. And I think, I can't remember which episode you said it on your podcast, where you said, focus on controlling the controllables. Focus on the things that you can control and forget the rest. It's, why are you going to try to change somebody's opinion of you or how they're seen or how they're treated? Do what you can do to fix it. And I love that bit where you talk about break action into tiny reps, build it and do it and again. And neuroplasticity is such an amazing thing, but we think, no, that's the way I was. That's the way my dad was. That's the way I was. My grandpa is. How can you explain a bit about neuroplasticity and what it means in terms of how we can actually change, but how we need to do it to make changes?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, so researchers and scientists used to think that after the age of 25, our brains were pretty much locked in stone, that the traits and abilities that we developed by, actually late teens was pretty much who we were going to be forever. And now research is showing that our brains are plastic and moldable and shapeable throughout the course of our entire lives. And there's certain periods of our life where they're extra plastic, they're extra shapeable. And that includes times when we're in love, when we're pregnant, when we have these pregnancy hormones actually make our brains really plastic. Middle age, like midlife crisis, that's your brain like being like, oh, let's rewire. Let's figure out what my life is about and what I want my life to be about. And we change, our personality changes. People become more secure, more committed, or they change their careers, right? Like, you see these windows. And then again, when our hormones change in our later life, right? After menopause, our brains are plastic again and reinventing our mentality. This is a guy show. So when you're testosterone, have you ever seen these guys who are like rough and tough and crusty? And then in their 70s, they soften and they love playing with little babies. Again, the hormonal changes allow the brain to learn new things and try new things, or say sorry or say I love you. Right? So our brains are wired to change throughout our whole lives. And I think a lot of times when we feel like, well, I'm depressed, I've been depressed my whole life, that's who I am, and we build out these stories and these labels around ourselves, what I really like to ask people is, okay, there are literally 500 different approaches to treating depression. Well, that's just 500 therapy types, not counting the lifestyle interventions. There's another 500 lifestyle interventions that can help with depression. And I'm talking about improving your nutrition, improving your sleep, changing your social habits, trying various supplements and medications, trying various forms of therapy, trying light therapy, and all of these different treatments. I have another poster with all these, like, there's 500 treatments for depression. Each of these little things adds up over time. And if we are having negative health habits, we're going to feel completely overwhelmed and our nervous system is going to shut down and say, why bother? But if we take these incremental little changes and we add them up, we're going to start getting 10 minutes more energy per day, 20 minutes more energy per day. And then with that 20 minutes, maybe you have 20 minutes where you can do a little bit more work. Like you could maybe go for a walk and then all of a sudden your body's feeling better. Now you've got 30 more minutes of energy every day. You start using that to like do some work on your self-talk and improve how you talk to yourself. And what happens is we see that it's basically like a pendulum. Your nervous system, like once you have enough resources and skills, it kind of flips that switch. And your nervous system is actually like, you know what? There is something I can do about this. There is something that's going to help me. And I've just seen this over and over and over again. I've seen it so much. I'm absolutely convinced that the vast, vast majority of people are capable of creating this change, but they don't know how. They don't know the skills, or they don't have the environment to implement these tiny changes that add up.
So, I love that.
And I think it takes us back to this self-talk, right? So if we go back to this example of like someone's at work, they get negative feedback, they get told that whatever it is sucks that they're doing, and they think, oh, I'm just such a failure, why bother? Or they get someone breaks up with them, oh, no one's going to ever love me. If we change that thinking to, I wonder what I can learn from this. I wonder if there's one tiny thing I could change. I wonder what I could try. And we break it down into these tiny steps. All of a sudden, their nervous system is like, cool, let's try that. And your nervous system goes back into activation where it's like, okay, let's like be active here instead of collapsed, instead of overwhelmed. And those tiny changes like add up like crazy. So that's like that neuroplasticity fits so closely with the self-talk, because what we do, instead of saying, hey, I'm completely unlovable, we say, I wonder if there's one communication skill that would help me solve relationship problems better. Or if we get really upset at work and we blow up, instead of saying, I'm just such a loser, I can't control my emotions, say, I wonder if there's one skill I could learn to work through my anger better. And you learn that one skill, and then you have another blow up later and you're like, okay, I wonder what's the next skill. And you learn like 2 or 3 skills. So I personally, first off, I'm convinced neuroplasticity is a thing. Like our brains are built to learn and adapt to our situations. And if we give them the environment where they can learn these skills, we can change. And then we take the negative self-talk and we turn it into a growth mindset. And we say, okay, if I feel like I can't make any friends, no one likes me, then we say, well, what's a skill for making friends? And we figure it out. We watch some YouTube videos. We ask a therapist or a coach or a friend, hey, what's one thing I could do that would make you feel better around me? You know?
I love that. I love the positivity, but I also love that because you'll have seen it in so many people who've come to you with the end of the world. And you probably had a lot of people just now going, okay, I can change. It is possible. You know, you would have given them a sense of hope that where their starting point isn't their future. It doesn't need to be where they end. But is there a point that you could give people a challenge that it doesn't matter if they're coming to you with anger, jealousy, whatever it is, they could use this one challenge to start? You know, is it just go catch yourself by saying would, could, should, and replace it with other words? Is it go for a walk when you feel down and keep your eyes looking up so you can't go into your memories? Was it, I think, if your eyes dip below, you go into your memory bank. So if they say look to the horizon so you can't access that part of your brain. I might have made that up. I can't remember. I read it somewhere. But
yeah, maybe our eye movements do impact our brain, but I'm not exactly sure on that one. So it probably is. I just don't know.
I know it's like up and left for this, for creative, and right and bottom for something, but I'm sure it's, if your eyes drop down, you can access your memory, something or other. But what's an action that we could do when we are to build in these tiny reps?
Okay. That's a really big question. And there's a lot of options. There's a ton of options. Like I could pull out my poster with all the options. But I think what I try to do is I try to present to my clients the fact that there are a lot of options. And then I have them pick the absolute easiest one first. So I'll give you an example of 10 of the things that help with emotion regulation. And then if someone was like, oh yeah, that's like the biggest pain point for me, or that's the easiest thing for me, then they would select that one thing. And so first I'm going to talk about some lifestyle stuff. So light therapy, using a therapy box, they're about $50. Use it 10 minutes a day. Research has shown they're more effective than SSRIs. 70 to 80% of people, their depression symptoms improve with 10 minutes a day of light therapy. The only side effects are if you have manic depressive disorder or bipolar disorder, manic symptoms as part of bipolar disorder. So light therapy, an important way to boost your mood, or sunlight exposure. It's like a super simple, like this is my favorite intervention because it's so simple.
Yeah.
Improving your sleep. There was a study that showed that 87% of people with major depressive disorder and insomnia, when they treated their insomnia, 87% of them, their depression symptoms went away. So, like, how do we improve our sleep? Well, that's another like drop-down menu with there's 10 or 20 things that are really effective with improving our sleep. And then we pick the easiest one of those and we start with the easiest one of those.
I think you've got a whole podcast on that, don't you, about sleep hygiene, and you're just like,
oh man. I've got a playlist on this, but that's like sleep is one of the biggest lifestyle factors that impacts emotional stability. What were you going to say? Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, is that something that you see because we see these magazines that give these cookie cutter, here's a fix that's going to change every single person's life, and it's quite personal. We have to approach it from their starting point, not what you think they should do. You have to kind of teach them the steps to find the journey themselves.
Well, and this is why I think therapy is so powerful, because you're like, hey, what could anyone do with one action? And I'm like, if you were sitting in my office, I could tell you, right? In 2 sessions, I could say, let's start with this 5-minute habit. But there's 100 5-minute habits that are powerful and impactful. So if you're just like doing it DIY version, you've got to kind of figure it out on your own. Which one is the intervention that's going to be most helpful for you right now? But that's why therapists are helpful. They're like, oh, here's the one to start with. Like, let's start with this. I can just see in your life, here's the one to start with. We'll start doing a little bit of exercise, or like physical exercise, or we'll do some of this self-talk stuff, or we'll do some gratitude practice. And, or we'll just do thought tracking, or we'll identify our stories, right? Like there's so many of these interventions that if it was me, I would pick one of these top 10 like most impactful lifestyle changes. And then I could also give you like probably a top 5 like therapy interventions that are helpful, but I can't tell anyone what's the one thing that's going to work for them. There isn't a hack. There is no hack, by the way.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We always look for the golden goose, the little thing that you see that on every YouTube video. This one thing changed my life and gave me a £10,000 rise in the body of a Greek god and a marriage, right. And you're like, yeah, of course it did.
Of course, right? Yeah. And I think that's where people get it wrong with mental health. They want to simplify it. They think, oh, if I have depression, it must be simple. It must mean I have a chemical imbalance, or it must mean it's caused by trauma, something like that, right? They'll come up with this really simple explanation. And I would say, well, depression is the cumulative adding up of these protective responses that we do. So that might be suppressing our feelings or blaming other people or blaming ourselves, or like when I'm tired, I just eat 20 Snickers. And these things add up over time. And then we realize, oh, why am I so depressed? Why am I so unhappy? Why am I so lonely? And it's like, oh, this is the accumulation of 1,000 choices over the last 3 years. So let's work on a couple of those and we'll start reversing that trend.
I really like that. I like how you're giving people these sort of starting points, that it's a personal journey and you'll meet them wherever they are. So what's the difference between feeling and processing an emotion versus suppressing and ruminating and kind of try push it away? How do we know we're working on these things healthily, and what's a kind of rough time frame to really see change?
Ooh, that's two good questions. I'll answer the second one first, and I think I can't answer the time frame. I think people who've done a lot of work and they're really good at emotion processing, they've built up emotion processing muscles so that they process big emotions much more quickly. So, for example, Irene Leon wrote a book about somatic therapy and how she has, spent 10 years learning how to listen to her body's physiological sensations. And then her husband died, and she felt grief. She allowed herself to feel it, and she moved on. And it wasn't like crushing for her. It was like, okay, I know exactly what to do with these feelings, and I'm okay. So for her, like processing that grief was a pretty straightforward process, because every time it came up, and it probably came up for years, but every time it came up, she was like, oh, cool, here's grief. Hi, grief. I know what to do with you. Come on in. Let me give you a hug. I'm listening to you. Feel you in my body. Oh, okay. You're moving on. All right. I'll go back to doing what I was doing. Right. Yeah. So that's like an example of someone who's like, they've built up enough emotion processing muscles that it happens relatively quickly. I can give another example. Thomas McConkey's a guy who does a lot of meditation work that I like. He's a Mormon and a Buddhist, two of my favorite people. Like, he's great. And he fought with his dad for 20 years. And every time he was around his dad, he felt angry and defensive and like his dad needed to change. He started doing this work where instead of avoiding his family because he thought his family was the problem, and maybe they were, he was really running from the feelings he had when he was around them. So he started doing this work where every Sunday he'd go to dinner with his dad. And he'd sit there, and these feelings would come up. And instead of desperately escaping his feelings, he would allow himself to sit with them, be curious about them. Like, I wonder what this hatred feels like inside. This is interesting. I'm feeling my shoulders tense. And he would just observe it without judging it, sit with it. And he did this every week for a year. And after a year or so, he started to notice that these feelings would come up and he would acknowledge them, say, cool, you're here. Great. I'm curious about you. Good job. And then they would just kind of move on. So these feelings of hatred or frustration or anger, now instead of lasting for 20 years straight or 4 or 5 days after Sunday dinner with his dad, they would last a minute or two and then they'd move along. Like, that's an example of like emotion processing where he got so good at making space for and acknowledging these feelings, emotions, the thoughts and the physical sensations, that now he hangs out with his dad and his dad is the same person he always was. And he's just not so, it just doesn't stick around. He still feels it, even intensely sometimes, but it just doesn't drag him down anymore.
I love that he kind of learned, because I think there was an episode in here where we talked about you're going to feel the fear anyway, but so name it, just go, thanks, Eugene. I know we should be shitting ourselves just now. We're about to do X, Y, perform, jump off this, whatever it is. But yeah, I know you're trying to keep me safe, but not now. And then you go and do it anyway. And by giving it a name, you kind of push it. You'd say, I understand your message, but go fuck yourself. Just get over it.
Yeah. And that's kind of, so that takes us back to the first question, which is, what do we do to process these feelings? What does it look like? And I described it a little bit, but what you just said is the very first step. Can you give it a name? Hello, fear. Hello, jealousy. Hello, sadness. I notice you're here today. Okay, you're here. And our default response is going to be to try and make it go away, whether by yelling at someone or by like trying to distract ourselves or to push it down. And instead of that, the second step is like, okay, we're going to allow feelings to show up and be like, hey, fear. Yeah. Like, okay. Like I recently did some exposure therapy with myself with rock climbing and taking a lot bigger falls than I like taking. And it's like every time I wanted to avoid it, I was like, okay, I'm going to feel scared. Let's go. Bring it on. Bring it on, fear. Let's do this. And just practicing feeling that fear. I made myself do 10 falls every single time I went to the gym. And after about a month, it didn't bother me so much. But even if it did, I had a system for letting the fear be there. Hey, okay. And I see this as a 3-part system. So we take this curious stance with our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical sensations. So a lot of people get worked up. Like, oh, if they feel like they might cry, they're going to scrunch their face really hard and move their lips a lot. I don't know if you watch people cry. They're like they're not, like, I'm not talking about the quivering lip. I'm talking about people who are trying not to cry. They're like
You can see
doing a lot of
yeah.
swallowing, squishing and squeezing to not cry. But there's other physiological things going on. Like, oh, my stomach feels upset. And we want that to go away. We're like, gotta go away, gotta breathe slow and force it down. And instead, if we take this accepting, allowing approach, it's like, okay, can I sit with an upset stomach for a minute? Can I notice it? And the crazy thing is, if you practice sitting with your physical sensations, if you practice sitting with sensations of panic or the physical sensations of anger, you practice sitting with those for 10 minutes a day, like by the end of a month, those sensations are going to come and go much more quickly than if we try to like resist them and tug a war with them.
I love it. 'Cause I remember, was it Headspace, the app, where they get a guided 10 minutes, and it was like, imagine you're sitting watching a motorway and your thoughts are coming in as cars and then they're going away. You don't need to interact with them. You can just watch them and go, all right, that's a pretty thought. And it's like you're saying, just give it that 10 minutes. And it's probably life-changing for a lot of men just now thinking, well, I can change this. But, they've always told themselves they're angry, they're negative, they're whatever it is. Because you see people who give themselves labels. But if we've done a bad thing, if we've been a cheater, done something illegal, whatever it is, or we tell ourselves we're bad people, what's the danger in labeling ourselves like that? How do we break out that toxic shame that we make that our identity? Because I've dealt with intrusive thoughts. I've been on SSRIs before, and I've believed all the shite that I've told myself. How do we change that identity?
It's a good question. So I have 2 takes on this, and one is the fundamental question you're asking is, how do we respond when we mess up? Like, what are we going to do with that? How do we respond when we disappoint ourselves, when we disappoint others, when we act in a way that goes against our deepest sense of what is right? What do we do with that? And the minute we make a mistake or we mess up, because we all do, we have a choice point. We can deny that we've made a mistake, or if we know we've made a mistake, we can still try to shift responsibility. And there's a lot of ways we avoid responsibility. This includes blaming others, blaming ourselves. Well, I'm just a fuck up. Like that's it, right? Like I'm just a bad person. I'm just a terrible human being. No one can love me. And there's other ways we do this, like, oh, it's the system, it's the government, it's my parents, and those are all ways of externalizing any accountability. It's like, oh, I did this because my boss is such a jerk. I stole because the economy doesn't allow me to make a good living, right? There's all these reasons, including the self-labeling. Oh, I'm just such a loser, right? I'm just such a bad person. And then the alternative at that choice point, is to say, I made a mistake. Now, what can I do to make it right? Or what can I do to make good come from this mistake? And sometimes that looks like admitting your mistake, taking accountability. Hey, you tell the person, I messed up. How have I hurt you? And sometimes it looks like just trying to learn from that experience. Okay, I screwed up in this way. What can I learn to make it better next time? Even if I don't perfectly perform next time, like how can I fix that? And these are like really important choice points. The choice point I did not mention is slightly higher up on this flow chart, and I have a flow chart. Can you tell I love my charts like
I was
so
expecting
much?
a PowerPoint. I was expecting a whiteboard.
Yeah, no, I've got a flow chart, and I can share it like if you want the links. But it's what we're talking about here is shame. So if someone's made a mistake or something bad has happened to them, there's a choice point up here. It's like, did I actually do something wrong? And kids who've been abused, they often blame themselves instead of their parents. It's a survival technique. Or women who've been sexually abused, or men who've been sexually abused. They think, well, I was complicit. They're little kids. I went along with it. I didn't fight back. I didn't scream and yell. And they blame themselves for the abuse that happened to them. Or they blame themselves for their abusive boss. Or they blame themselves for situations they can't really control.
Is that
So
to
the
make
very
sense of it in your own head, to understand it at
yeah.
that level? Okay.
Yeah. Our brain is a meaning-making machine, and it's always going to take two pieces of fact and wonder, like, how are these connected? Like, oh, something bad happened to me. Here I am as a person. What did I do to make this happen? Well, I should have known better. Or, well, I should have, it must be me that's bad. Or my mom just yelled at me and told me this, that, and the other. It's like, well, must be because I'm a loser, or I'm a bad kid, right? Our brain it makes words. Our brain is constantly just cranking out meanings. And you'll see this all the time. Like if you text someone and they don't text you back, if this is an important person you're texting, your brain is going to start cranking out meanings. Maybe they're mad at me. Maybe I'm being annoying. Maybe and you just start cranking this out. And those meanings that you're inventing, they're all about you and not the other person. So if your beliefs are the world is an unfair place, then you're thinking, why are they so irresponsible? Why won't they text me back? They're so inconsiderate. And if your meaning-making machine says, I'm a bad person, they must hate me. I must be so annoying, right? Your brain is just going to crank out these meanings. So if we go back to this shame cycle, the very first step is to ask, did I actually do something wrong? And a lot of times with trauma and abuse, the answer is no. So a woman who was raped, did she actually do something wrong? No. The person who could have prevented the rape was the rapist, not her, right? Or a man. A lot of men are sexually abused, right? A lot of men blame themselves, and it's much more difficult for them to honestly assign accountability to the abuser. So the very first step on this, how do we deal with difficult situations and shame, is to say, well, was it actually me, or was it actually the abuser's fault? If the answer is yes, I actually harmed someone with my actions, then we have another choice point. Am I going to take accountability, or am I going to hide? Am I going to run? Am I going to blame? Am I going to push that accountability onto someone else? And the most truthful, helpful thing we can do is be very honest about accountability. Take full accountability, 100% accountability for everything I'm 100% responsible for. And then say, what can I learn from this? How can I create connection and reconciliation with the people that I've harmed? How can I choose to act differently, or teach others, or learn and grow from this? And if you want, we can share the flow chart in the video that's associated with this, because it's a big question, but I think it's the most important question, because I think we have all these little micro failings, and we don't realize that our subconscious response is to beat ourselves up, or our subconscious response is to blame ourselves or to blame others. And that just keeps us from actually truly being able to connect and heal.
Because it is a question I get quite a bit of, as people are finding out about Me Too, or, or they've been in fights when they were younger, or they've done this, or they've done that. And it's that moment of, I'm a bad person, I'm this, I'm that. And you can see them sort of the head drop, they're living that identity. And it's like, what do we do? Because we can see the positive emotions, positive feelings, what what these mean. But when we're feeling jealous, comparing ourselves, when we're feeling self-hatred, suicidal, how do we take the message from that? Is that what we're doing? Is that why it comes in waves? It's try to say, listen to me, I'm telling you this, and we're trying to push it away. Or do we do action? Is that better than ruminating? What's a good way of dealing when you're in this cycle of beating yourself
Like
up in the
rumination.
world? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, of course, the fastest, most direct path is to work with a therapist, because a therapist is going to help you. But I mean, let's DIY it too. Because that's what we do, right? So many people can't access therapy. You've got to identify your self-talk. You've got to say, okay, this is my brain making words, and you're stuck in this cycle of rumination. Yeah. You want to change a thought? Move a muscle. Yeah. Especially for men, right? Go for a walk. If you
I always
are
thought that was suppressing it, though. That if you did that, sorry to interrupt, but like I thought if you went and did something else, you were trying to say, "I don't want to think about you," and it would come back stronger. Does that not?
It's a good question. I think we have to zigzag our way out of depressive rumination, because everything we think when we're really depressed is not going to be logical or helpful. So sometimes we have to get feeling better before we can start thinking better or thinking clearly if we're doing this on our own.
Yeah.
I think with a therapist would not be like, hey, let's ignore that thought and let's just go for a walk. A therapist would be like, let's identify that thought. Let's write it down. Let's see if we can figure out where it comes from. Let's see if we can figure out why it's a lie. This thought, like, I'm just so bad. I'm so worthless. Nobody loves me. Everything's awful. I've screwed up so much. There's no hope for me. Like, if you're doing that on your own, we have to do something to kind of escape that space for a minute. And then when you're feeling just a teeny bit better, a teeny bit more energy, well, there's lots of ways to do this, right? And this is why therapy is so valuable, because a therapist can tailor that intervention. Sometimes you get feeling better and then you process those feelings. So if you're in a super duper low slump, go work out, go do something that feels good, go be around people. And then when you're feeling better, do some writing about it or talking about it. And if you don't have a person to talk to, talk into your voice memos, talk into your phone. So, but like when we're really depressed, you cannot just like snap out of it. Like everything you think when you're depressed is going to keep fueling that depression. So sometimes I think we have to kind of zigzag our way out of it. Now, in therapy, what we do is we'd be like, okay, let's take those thoughts, let's pick them apart, let's replace them with something healthier. But that's pretty hard to do on your own when you're really in a depressive state.
No.
Now, if you're trying to DIY this, I would say, okay, you're ruminating, you're thinking you're a piece of crap, and you try and find something that's going to elevate your mood. So for me, it's going for a walk. That always makes me feel better. Go for a walk. Okay, the next step is let's process this. So I'm going to write. I'm going to encourage people to write about it. Anything you can do to make it physical instead of up in your head is going to help you see it more clearly. Write it out long form on a piece of scratch pad. It's better if this is physical, like paper and pen, but you can do it in your phone or in your computer too. And then you're going to ask yourself the question, okay, what's the negative self-talk here? You're going to ask yourself the question, is this helping me or harming me? And you could identify maybe one area like, oh, I'm such a loser, or a catastrophizing thought like, oh, this is never going to work out. My life's going to be like this forever. That's like the hopelessness story. It's hopeless. That's your story. And let's say we're going to pick one area of thinking that you're going to work on. You say, okay, I'm hopeless. I am hopeless. That's my story. And you're going to say, well, how's this story benefiting me? It excuses me from trying. Okay, what's the opposite of that? Okay, I'm going to try one thing. The depressed mind is going to say, well, it doesn't matter. You try changing one thing, it's not going to do any good. What's the point? You're so screwed up that just changing one thing's not going to do any good. Okay, you have to say, thank you, depression. Appreciate your feedback, but no. Like, I'm going to still try one thing. And you say, okay, what would be a more helpful version of this thought? I'm never going to figure anything out. You replace that with something that ends in yet. I haven't figured this out yet. Nothing I do makes a difference. Okay, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to learn a different skill or a different way to think about this. And and then maybe, yeah, talk to yourself as you would a friend, right? Okay. Hey buddy, you got this. We're going to try again. Let's learn a different way to respond to that situation. And then you try to build a little teeny system to implement that. So if it's thinking a new thought, every time you think I'm hopeless, the new thought is, okay, I can learn a new skill to make my life better. I can learn a new skill that's going to improve my job prospects or my relationships or how I respond to emotions. So I can learn new things. Let's say that's your new thought, or hey, people love me, or like whatever it is, right? You build a replacement thought, and then you put reminders around you. Like, here's the story. It's hopeless. Here's the replacement thought. I can keep trying and good things come into my life. And you put that somewhere physical and tangible. Like maybe it pops up as a reminder on your phone 4 times a day, something like that.
I love it. I don't think you appreciate just how life changing that'll be for a lot of people who can't go and find a therapist or are waiting on a waiting list. But
Mm-hmm.
how can we help you help us when we are seeing a therapist? How do we find a good one? How do we explain how we're feeling rather than going, I feel bad? How do we pick our triggers? How do we explain the severity? How do we use the words that you want to hear to know the scale, the main issues? Is there any kind of thing that we can do to be a good therapy student? Or
the number one thing I would say is every time I've had a client come in who brings a notebook, they do better. Like, if you consider this as like, this is a process I'm going to learn and I have to study and work at this, you're going to get better. Like that mindset of like, if I try, I will get feeling better. Like it's absolutely guaranteed that you're going to make new progress and learn new skills. Bring a notebook so that you can write down throughout your week what's going on and what you're noticing and looking for trends. And then when you're in therapy, a lot of the stuff the therapist says might feel a little overwhelming or confusing. So it's helpful to write down what you're learning in therapy so you can remember it throughout the week. That's like the number one thing I would say. Now, in the US and other places, I mean, I know there's like public health system in England, so it's a little bit different where you have a little bit less choice, right? As far as finding a therapist, or is that,
It can take about 6 months to see somebody, just as a first referral,
Yeah. So, I mean, for people who do have an option with therapy, it's like, well, you can, there are websites, for example, Psychology Today it's all over the world, but you can use that to kind of look up therapists and try and filter them by the specialty you want. You can filter them by whether they cover your insurance and things like that. If you want to find a therapist, like I think it's important to find a therapist who you want to look for a therapist who you feel safe with. You feel like, you can trust them. You feel relatively comfortable with them, but not too comfortable. You don't want a therapist who's just going to be like, yeah, you poor thing. You're a good person. It's okay. And you don't want a therapist who's just going to make you feel good every session, but leave you with no skills to manage anything during the week. So you want a therapist who you feel safe with, but they're going to challenge you. And they're going to be like, what? You believe that? Like, that's not a helpful thought. Or they're going to be like, that's like, you got to stop doing that, right? You want a therapist who's going to push you and challenge you, not just make you feel good in the session. So I would say sometimes I would say expect that therapy is not going to feel good all the time if you want to see progress.
I love that. And is it a kind of letting the patient discover their own journey, like the video game map, lighting up the dark parts of the map, kind of showing us the way? Is that your mission, to kind of let us, give us the prompts to let us find our own discovery?
So you're going to find, if you like people who've done therapy and they've tried multiple therapists, they're going to see that every therapist is a little different. And you can as a therapy consumer, you can tailor your experience a little bit by telling your therapist what you want. Now, I, as a therapist, currently am leaning much more toward being more directive and doing more education to help people like make change and progress happen faster. But there are therapists who are just going to be like, yeah, sure, tell me about your feelings. And then every week we just kind of talk about what's going on and we suggest a few little things, where other therapists might be more directive. Like, oh, you go in and there's specific problems that you can solve it in a more directive way. So some therapists are going to come in and be like, here's what you should do. Here's what you should do. Here's what you should do. And other therapists are going to be more like, hey, so how's that working for you? Oh, it's not working? Okay. Would you like to try something different? Do you have any ideas on what might look different? Like, if you were to change this problem yourself, what would you change? So there's therapists who are going to be much more client directed. And their therapists are going to be really passive, and they're just going to let the client run the show. And then there's going to be therapists who are going to be like, okay, you want parenting advice? We have an 8-week program, and we're going to walk you through this parenting program in 8 weeks. Or, CBT therapists are going to be much more directive and have a process and a plan to walk you through. And other types of therapists are going to be a little bit more like, let's just listen and talk and work through things. And I'm not primarily a CBT therapist. Like I try and do both. And I try and very much listen to what my client wants and help them get the skills and the support they need in the most efficient way so that they can grow faster. And I think if you tell your therapist, so for example, I like it when my therapist, I haven't been in therapy for a while, but when my therapist would just kind of listen to me and gently guide me and validate, but then push me.
Yeah.
My husband wanted my therapist, our therapist, we were in marriage therapy last year for a while, and it helped a lot. He wanted the therapist to be like, hey, Ryan, here's what you're doing that's causing this problem. Here's what you should do differently. And here's a system to implement it. Will you do that? And he'd be like, oh, okay, sure. So my recommendation to him was tell the therapist you want her to be more direct. So he did. He said, hey, I want you to tell me what to do more. And she was like, oh, okay. And then he got a better experience in therapy than he was getting before.
It kind of shows you the difference between guys and girls. Girls want to the emotional side, they want to learn and grow, while guys want to be just told. We want to just know what to do. I can't believe we're past our time already, because I think we're just scratching the. There's so much I still want to chat to you about, and I find your stuff honestly amazing. You're life-changing, you're so helpful, you're inspiring, your podcast is amazing. I genuinely listen to it every day, and there's so much I can take from it, and I feel like I'm just on this journey, so I'd love to have you back on. But what do you want people to remember about this, about neuroplasticity, mental health, that we can change? What would you want them to take from this chat?
Here's what I would just say. So when I worked in residential treatment, we had these youth in a residential treatment. They lived there. The staff would come in, and many of them came in with very severe forms of mental illness. So one of my clients, she had drug addiction, she had an eating disorder, she was suicidal, she had an anxiety disorder. Another of my clients had like OCD and school problems and family problems. And they came into this residential treatment center, and we did rigorous testing with them when they arrived. Like, what are their depression scores? What are their anxiety scores? All those things. We did rigorous testing with them like every 6 months or every 3 months. And then when they left, we do rigorous testing. And then a year out and 2 years out. And what we found is that over the course of about a year to 14 months of treatment, it was like 93% of them no longer met the criteria for the disorder they came in with. So if they came in with depression or anxiety disorder, or OCD was ruining their life, by the end of a year of treatment, is a lot of treatment, that 93% of them no longer met the criteria for those disorders. Like, these disorders are treatable with enough resources. Now, and then we measured them a year out and 2 years out, and it was like 60 or 70% of them were still doing very well a year and 2 years out. And the types of interventions we were doing, there were a lot of interventions every day. It was getting good sleep, getting support with their school, getting family therapy, like getting individual therapy, having a supportive community, processing their emotions with the staff each day, and learning what to do with anxiety or with relationships or communication. But so this might seem impossible to the person who's out there. They might think, well, I can't afford residential treatment. I can't afford to have a staff help walk me through my emotions every single day. But what I would say is each of these skills are something you can learn. Like, you can learn how to have better nutrition. Not done yet. You can learn how to, that's my 2-year-old outside. You can learn how to process your emotions. You can learn to work through anxiety. And if you implement these on a micro level, like you have immense potential to decrease your symptoms of mental illness. And I saw the same thing like with my online courses. So I teach these skills in my online courses, and we've had like 20,000 people take my How to Process Your Emotions course. And that course, we did like intake and outtake studies, and 98.6% of people who took that course said it helped them improve their mental health. And all that tells me is these are skills that can be learned. That's my takeaway. These are skills that can be learned. It's not like some woo-woo magical thing that you just can't figure out. It's like, no, here's skill number 1, here's skill number 2, let's learn it. Like, it's practical. So that's what I would want people to know. It's like if you want to learn how to improve your mental health, you can do it.
I love it. And you've got a wealth of stuff on your YouTube, your podcast. It's probably 90 therapy sessions for free there. You know, there's so much. I think there's over 200 episodes of stuff on each dialed in stuff. But could you just go in quickly about your website, the courses that you offer, your social media? How can we join you and connect with you?
Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel. It's called Therapy in a Nutshell. And that course I just mentioned, that 98% of people like saw improvement in their mental health, that's actually free on YouTube, like the whole course. Like, I give it away. You can also access it as part of my membership, which is therapyinanutshell.com. But that course, if you search on YouTube, Therapy in a Nutshell, How to Process Your Emotions, like, all 31 videos are right there for free. So those are probably the 2 best places to find me. I have some other free courses on my website about like how to regulate your nervous system, how to deal with panic attacks. And then at therapyinanutshell.com, you can also sign up for a membership. We do you can have access to all 10 of my courses and live group calls every week and stuff like that.
Well, that's it for another week. And thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.